A new study just showed that Ozempic and Wegovy users lost only 3% of their body weight after 68 weeks, which is quite a bit less than what you can lose with natural methods like diet and exercise. But there's more to the story here, which we'll discuss in this video. I want to talk about a recent study that was released for the once-a-week injection Ozempic. And by the way, Ozempic is a semaglutide, and it's also the active ingredient in Wegovy, except Wegovy is dosed a little bit higher, 2.4 versus 0.25 milligrams. This study, called the SELECT Trial 4, which was a randomized controlled trial, had over 1,700 participants, and it was looking at the effects of Ozempic when compared to placebo over 68 weeks. Now, the participants were all adults, with an average age of about 56 years old. They were overweight or obese with a BMI between 27 and 45 kilograms per meter squared, with about 69% of them being women. Now, they were instructed to make some modest changes to their lifestyle, including eating 100 grams less per day and exercising about 150 minutes a week, which is about 30 minutes 5 days a week. The people taking Ozempic were instructed to start with a low dose and then increase the dose every 4 weeks until reaching a maximum dose of 2.4 milligrams per week after 20 weeks. And these doses are the same doses used in the Wegovy studies. So what did they find? Well, the results showed that those who were taking Ozempic lost about 3% of their total body weight, whereas those who were getting the placebo lost 1%. That sounds pretty good, right? Well, not so fast, because a 3% weight loss for these individuals would look like this. If you take someone who weighs 100 kilograms, which is about 220 pounds, 3% of that would be 3 kilograms, or about 6.6 pounds. If you took someone who weighs 80 kilograms, that would be 2.4 kilograms, or about 5.2 pounds. So even if you're able to lose 6 pounds on Ozempic out of 220 pounds, that's about 2.7%. And if you're able to lose about 5 pounds out of 176 pounds, that's 2.8%. Now, that may sound like a lot, but let me show you how much weight you can lose naturally without medication. One study found that intermittent fasting resulted in a weight loss of about 7% over 16 weeks. And that's without even tracking calories. Another study found that a calorie deficit of 500 calories resulted in a loss of 4.4 kilograms, or 9.7 pounds in 24 weeks, which is 4.4% of my weight. And keep in mind that most of the weight lost in these studies was fat loss, whereas the weight lost with Ozempic was probably mostly lean tissue, since the participants were told to exercise less than 20 minutes a week, which doesn't really burn much fat at all. I mean, I have an exercise bike here in the gym in my building, and I never see anyone use it. No one wants to come in here and break a sweat, and that's because it's a lot easier to cut calories than it is to work out. But there are a couple of reasons why you might want to work out rather than cut your calories. First is that you preserve more muscle mass. Second is that you improve your insulin sensitivity. Third is that you become stronger. And fourth is that you decrease your blood pressure and improve other risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So even though you might lose less weight, the weight you lose is probably going to be more fat, and you get all of these amazing health benefits. The other problem is that when you stop the medication, the weight starts coming back. In fact, in the SELECT trial, when they stopped taking Ozempic, the weight started creeping back up, and after 68 weeks, they were right back where they started. Now, there are ways to potentially maintain your weight after stopping Ozempic, such as continuing to take the medication once a week instead of once a month, which could potentially lower the rebound effect, or doing intermittent fasting, which has been shown to help maintain your weight after you go on a diet. But ultimately, if you're going to put yourself through the side effects of taking Ozempic, which we're going to talk about next, you should really weigh the pros and cons. For example, the people in the SELECT trial experienced nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, constipation, and decreased appetite. So if you're considering taking Ozempic or Wegovy, ask yourself whether the side effects are worth the benefits. For many people, they're not. And that's why I recommend trying the natural approaches first, such as diet and fasting, which don't involve any medication side effects, and they can also improve your metabolic health. Wegovy was recently approved for those with a BMI of 30 or greater, which is considered obese, but it can also be prescribed off-label for those with a BMI of 27 to 30, which is considered overweight. However, it is still recommended that these individuals also have one or more weight-related diagnoses such as high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, etc. Although Ozempic and Wegovy are technically different medications, they're both part of a class of drugs called GLP-1 receptor agonists. These medications mimic a hormone called glucagon, like peptide-1, or GLP-1 for short. This hormone is released after you eat, and it helps you feel full. So by mimicking this hormone, Ozempic and Wegovy can help you decrease your food intake. And although the weight loss is modest, it's similar to what you see with phenytoin topiramate, which is a medication that's been around for a while. The big difference is that phendimetrazine has a lot of side effects such as dry mouth, constipation, insomnia, headache, nervousness, dizziness, and increased heart rate. Some of the side effects of Ozempic and Wegovy include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, constipation, decreased appetite, fatigue, headache, vertigo, and it can also cause thyroid tumors in rodents. And even though the FDA says that rodents are not relevant to humans, well, they were wrong about that, because a recent case control study found that rodents who received Ozempic did develop thyroid cancer. It is also important to note that most of these side effects from Ozempic and Wegovy are dose-dependent, meaning that the higher the dose, the more likely you are to experience them. For example, at the highest dose of Wegovy, about 61% of users experience side effects, whereas at the lowest dose, only 37% experienced side effects. At this point, you might be wondering, well, what's the best approach to losing weight? Well, there are many factors that influence your ability to lose weight, including genetics, gut microbiome, activity levels, sleep, stress, and hormones. And these factors differ from person to person. For example, if you have insulin resistance, which is a very common problem, where your cells don't respond properly to insulin, this can make it harder to lose weight. Since insulin is a powerful anabolic hormone that promotes fat storage, this is why intermittent fasting can be very effective for many people, because it can help improve insulin sensitivity, making it easier to lose weight. On the other hand, if you have hypothyroidism or low thyroid function, this can also make it harder to lose weight, since the thyroid hormone T3 is involved in regulating metabolism. In this case, treating the underlying condition can be helpful. There are also certain hormones that can influence weight, such as cortisol, the stress hormone. High levels of cortisol can lead to belly fat gain, making it harder to lose weight. So managing stress through techniques like deep breathing, meditation, or yoga can be beneficial. And lastly, your gut microbiome plays a big role in your metabolism and weight. Recent research suggests that the composition of your gut bacteria influences your ability to digest food, absorb nutrients, and extract energy from food. So taking probiotics or eating foods that promote a healthy gut microbiome, like fermented foods, can be helpful. However, it is important to remember that everyone is different, and what works for one person may not work for another. So it is always a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional or a registered dietitian to determine the best approach for you. They can help you identify any underlying conditions or factors that may be contributing to your weight gain and work with you to develop a personalized plan that takes into account your individual needs and preferences. To learn more about intermittent fasting, click the video on the screen now.